Loeys-Dietz and your short and long-term disability claim. Loeys-Dietz syndrome is a genetic disorder that will impact the connective tissue in your body. That connective tissue provides not only strength, but flexibility to your bones, ligaments, muscles, and even to blood vessels. It'll affect multiple body systems. It can result in a disability insurance claim if you have disability insurance benefits and you're no longer able to work. Now, there are common problems associated with this disease. There's enlargement of the aorta, which can result in an aneurysm, or what's called a dissection of the blood vessels. There can also be skeletal problems, and those can include a premature fusion of the skull, scoliosis of the spine, a sunken or protruding chest, and joint deformities. There's also spontaneous collapse of the lungs, and there are also hernias. Now, the two most disabling problems, in my opinion, are cardiac and skeletal in nature. From a cardiological standpoint, as I've said, one of the most common characteristics of this syndrome is this issue with the enlargement of the aorta. Now, the aorta is the large blood vessel that distributes blood from your heart to the rest of your body. And Loeys-Dietz syndrome can cause a weakening and a stretching of the aorta. That in turn can cause an aneurysm. That's a bulge in a blood vessel wall. The stretching can also lead to a sudden tearing of the layers of the aorta wall. That's known as an aortic dissection. Unfortunately, with Loeys-Dietz syndrome, you can also have aneurysms or dissections in other arteries throughout your body. Now, unfortunately, these can be fatal, but more often than not, they're going to lead to other problems. There are also skeletal problems associated with Loeys-Dietz syndrome, and the primary one is scoliosis. That's an abnormal side-to-side curvature of your spine. There are also joint deformities known as contractures, and what they'll do is they'll restrict the movement of a joint, and there'll also be joint inflammation, and normally you'll see it in the spine, the hands, knees, and the joints of the hands and the wrist. That means you'll have difficulty using your hands. Now, you can file a claim for short-term or long-term disability benefits if you have the policy or plan. But you need to understand that carriers and plans are not in the business of paying benefits, and they certainly don't understand the cardiological and skeletal symptoms of Loeys-Dietz syndrome. You, the policyholder or plan beneficiary, have the burden to prove objective evidence of your diagnosis. You need to provide objective basis of the restrictions and limitations caused by your symptoms, and you also have to establish a causal relationship between those disabling symptoms and your inability to perform your own or any occupation. Now, in the case of cardiological symptoms, I think one of the best ways to prove this is to address not only an aneurysm, but the risk that the aneurysm has on your ability to lift or your ability to do other physical requirements of your occupation or other occupations. Aneurysms can cause functional problems also, and I think it's imperative that your physician identify, quantify, and explain your unique restrictions and limitations as they apply to you and how they impact your ability to do your own or any other occupation. So let's say, for example, you have skeletal issues that result in a contracture of the joints, let's say the hand joints, or inflammation of the hand. Of course, you can have this in your hip, knee, or other parts of your body. But what you want to do is to establish the limited mobility of your hand and the stiffness. If you have problems in your hips, you want to establish that you need to get up and move around, and that the stiffness of the joints limit your ability to function in terms of sitting, standing, walking, bending, and the use of your hands. Remember, you've got the burden of proof. It's incumbent upon your physician to identify, quantify, and explain those restrictions. It may be that you need to undergo what's called a functional capacity evaluation. That's an objective measure of the functionality of your body and your joints, okay? Now, one of the problems you may have is that carriers may say, look, you've had this problem your whole life. You've worked, nothing's changed. And we don't see why you are disabled. I want you to understand this game because disability carriers and plans have many claims denial tools in their toolbox. And as I've said, they may say, look, you've had this all along, nothing's changed, you don't have a disability claim. It's important that as your symptoms progress, that you're documenting through your medical records the progression of your symptoms and the problems that you're having with the functionality of the joint or joints involved. So your medical records want to document the increased stiffness or the increased inflammation, the difficulty you have using your particular joint. So you want to document the progression of your symptoms. Just as important is documenting how the progression of the symptoms in terms of the duration, frequency, or location have increasingly made it more difficult or even impossible to do the material and substantial duties of your occupation. You also have to explain why the treatment is becoming less effective or how the side effects of the treatment are impairing your ability to do the material and substantial duties of your own or any other occupation. And again, as I said, it may be that you have to have a functional capacity evaluation, but you can see it takes teamwork between your physician and an experienced disability attorney to make sure that your records document what needs to be documented before you stop work and apply for benefits. And if your claim's been denied, it's going to take teamwork to file a winning appeal. Remember, you'll only have 180 days in which to file an appeal. Call me today at 727-894-3188 for a complimentary consultation. I can help you get the disability benefits you deserve regardless of where you live in the United States and regardless of who your disability carrier is. 727-894-3188.